Before we begin, in 2019, YouTube was caught data mining children under the age of 13, violating the Child's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies meant to dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. This video is not made for kids. It is not targeted at kids. It is not advertising to kids. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. It's finally time, the Series 1 finale of Sarah Jane Smith. Mirror, Signal, Manoeuvre. Released in November of 2002, directed by Gary Russell, written by Peter Engelides. Mirror, Signal, Manoeuvre once again stars Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. As always, I will be talking spoilers, so if you have not heard Mirror, Signal, Manoeuvre, well, first of all, if you don't care, go ahead and keep watching, but if you have not heard Mirror, Signal, Manoeuvre yet, in the description box below will be the link to Big Finish's website, where you can either buy the individual downloads for $2.99 USD, or Sarah Jane Smith, the complete series. And this is a really good story. I have some big issues with it, but overall, it's really great. And because the star of that mainly is Elizabeth Sladen's performance. So far, this isn't my favorite story in Sarah Jane Smith, but this is one of my favorite stories for Sarah, if that makes any sense. Just Elizabeth Sladen gives it her all, and she is just fantastic. Like Test of Nerve, Sarah's paranoia is starting to get to her again. So, she's not answering her phone when Josh and Natalie call her. She's not telling them where she is. And like the story, then there's a bit of a tragedy to it as well, because like the story surmises, like a couple of people mention, Sarah is so busy looking in her rearview mirror, checking over her shoulder, that she's not seeing the danger that's right in front of her. So what's the story here? In the passing of time between Ghost Town and Mirror, Signal, Manoeuvre, Sarah has found a story about an old biological warfare project from World War II, and she's gone to India to track one of the last living scientists from that project. And I haven't really talked about the sound design and the scoring of these stories that much, so I'll give it a moment to talk about here. I really like the score. A lot of the score really stands out in this series through the scene transitions, because it's sort of this funky 70s score, which kind of fits with Sarah really well, surprisingly. And the sound design here is really good. It really sets the scene that Sarah is in India. And while she's in India, she meets another reporter from Planet 3, where she was fired at the beginning of this series, Wendy Jennings. And they find out the reports they're researching are sort of tied together. So they team up to figure out what's going on. And meanwhile, because she's essentially ghosting them, Josh and Natalie are starting to get really worried about her. She hasn't told them where she went. She's not answering her phone. And Natalie, for one, is worried that Josh is worried Sarah might be in danger. And Natalie is worried that Sarah's being so paranoid for no reason. This is one of Natalie's biggest roles to date, and she's good in this story, but I found, thinking back on it, her character's been kind of stagnant throughout this entire series. She's very one note. She's had no arc and no real development, but, she's just Sarah's hacker, her tech expert, so to speak, and nothing really beyond that. And again, Josh is great in this story too, but Josh has been great this entire series, so there's nothing really to say there. One of my first major issues with this story, though, is the heavily truncated timeline. Sarah and Wendy are traveling all through India, which is one of the biggest countries in the world, and, they go to these islands, they're traveling by train from place to place, and meanwhile, Josh is getting a flight from the UK to India to track down Sarah, and which ends up with him finding her at the end, and it feels like, and because I'm not an expert on maps or the world or math for that matter, it feels like a lot of this, specifically the traveling, is happening a lot faster than it realistically should. And I think part of the problem with that is because there is no mention of passing time. Like, it could be that they are traveling for weeks or months or who knows how long, but no mention of it is ever made, which probably leads to this really rushed feeling. Also, the tension of this story is great. As Sarah continues to throw herself into this story she's investigating and try to peel back the layers and becomes more and more paranoid about someone being after her, the story does really well at creating this very tense mood, which is just, I love tense stories. Let's just say that. So, is there anything else I want to mention before I get into the big spoilers and the end of the story? Nope. So let's get into it. Again, last warning for spoilers. So, what's going on? Who's been setting up Sarah and trying to ruin her? The remnants of the Scientific Reform Society and one Miss Hilda Winters. Now, if any of those words sound familiar to you, it's because the Scientific Reform Society and Hilda Winters were the main antagonists of Robot, Tom Baker's first story. So, after the events of Robot, the Scientific Reform Society and Hilda Winters were arrested, and, they were imprisoned for 15 years, and Hilda was recently let go. And while conducting her own agenda, orchestrating her own plans, Sarah was sort of a side project for her. She wanted revenge against Sarah for the role she had in essentially ruining her. And the confrontation between them is great. Mr. Harris from Comeback and Test of Nerve is back. He was also a member of the Scientific Reform Society. Wendy Jennings, that other reporter, it turns out is actually Wendy Jellicoe. I think Professor or Dr. Jellicoe was one of the other antagonists in Robot, and she's related to him in some way. It's never explained explicitly how, but it is explained they are related in some way. And what they plan to do is, with this scientist from that World War II biological warfare experiment I just mentioned, they are going to poison India's water supply, kill millions of people, and, for Miss Winters, as an added bonus, frame Sarah for it. And again, it's just a really tense, frightening scene, how Hilda reveals that the entire time, over the course of all of Series 1, she's always been 2 steps ahead of Sarah. And so, as they leave to poison the water supply and essentially force Sarah to watch it, Sarah, of course, escapes and is reunited with Josh, again, talking about the aforementioned very rushed sense of passing time I mentioned. Here comes my other issue with this story, the extremely anticlimactic ending. Because Miss Winters and Mr. Harris and this doctor all go to the dam to try and poison it, while 2 of the other members of the SRS go behind with Sarah. Sarah manages to crash the car and escape, and then Josh shows up and rescues her, while Hilda Winters and Mr. Harris drive on to their goal. And then Josh mentions that he and Natalie have reported a terrorist attack on the dam, because that's essentially what it is, and that, the police and all sorts of law enforcement and the government will be waiting for them. And again, it's after all this time, after all this buildup, only getting a mention of the villain's comeuppance and not actually seeing it is very anticlimactic. And, deciding that they now know who their enemy is and are now prepared to fight him, Sarah and Josh decide not to see this ending through and go back home. And yeah, it felt cheap. Mirror Signal Maneuver is a great, fun story. It's got good tension, good atmosphere, a phenomenal performance from Elizabeth Sladen. However, there are some really big issues that keep it from being as good as it really could. So I'm going to give Mirror Signal Maneuver an 8 out of 10. And then join me next time when we will be beginning Series 2 with Buried Secrets. So what were your thoughts on Mirror Signal Maneuver? Start a conversation in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. Share the video around. All of that helps my channel grow. In the description box below, you will find the link to my Ko-fi, where you can help support the channel, and you'll find the link to my Twitter, where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and I'll see you guys next time.